There are moments in life when pain arrives not as a storm, but as a whisper, soft, deliberate, and strangely familiar. We wonder why the very hands we trusted left wounds instead of warmth. But what if, in the quiet ache of betrayal, there lies a sacred invitation? What if the breaking was never meant to end us, but to bend us towards something more eternal? Like the pauses between musical notes that give melody its meaning, the silence of God and the sting of others may be not absence, but arrangement. Every hurt, every unanswered prayer, every tear that fell unnoticed may be part of a divine composition too vast for the moment to hold. And though we often resist the pain, we must ask, is it not in the dark soil that the seed first begins to grow? Perhaps in the hands of the infinite, even our wounds are brushstrokes in a masterpiece we have yet to see. There's something about pain that makes us stop. It halts the rhythm of our days and forces us to sit with the questions we've spent a lifetime trying to outrun. Why did this happen? Why them? And why would God allow it? Those are not small questions. They echo in the chambers of our hearts, especially when the hurt comes from someone we trusted, someone who should have loved us better. But I want to invite you into something deeper today, not to offer simple answers, but to open a window into a greater truth. You see, we often look at pain as a sign that something has gone terribly wrong, that somehow God has stepped away from the frame of our story. But what if the pain is not a punishment? What if it's a portal? Because sometimes it is in the breaking that the light begins to pour through. We don't typically recognize it in the moment. The wound feels too raw, the betrayal too fresh. And yet, when we look back, how many of us can say that our greatest seasons of growth came not during ease, but after we were brought low, when everything we thought we understood was stripped away, and all we had left was the quiet, trembling trust that somehow even this was not wasted. That is the strange mercy of God. He doesn't always shield us from the things that hurt. Not because he delights in our suffering, but because he sees what we do not. He sees what that pain will unlock, what it will unearth. You see, there are doors in the soul that only pain can open. Depths of compassion, humility, resilience, and faith that do not grow on mountaintops. They are carved out in the valleys. God is not absent in your ache. He is closer than breath, even when he is silent. And often, it's in the quiet aftermath of pain that we discover how much we were being prepared for what we may not yet know, but there's purpose in the shaping. There always is. I think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, left to die, then sold into slavery. Years would pass before the full picture came into view. But in the middle of it, he was just a man holding on to God in the dark. That's what pain does. It narrows our vision until the only thing left to hold is the hand of God. And often that's where the real transformation begins. Don't rush past your hurt looking for resolution. Don't silence it too quickly with platitudes or distractions. Sit with it, let it speak, because pain is a teacher. And if we let it, it will show us who we are, and more importantly, who God is. Now, that may not sound like the comfort you came looking for, but the truth is, comfort that only soothes and never shapes will never carry you through the storms of life. The comfort God gives, it's rooted in truth. And truth often comes dressed in discomfort, because God loves you too much to leave you unshaken when there's something eternal he's trying to awaken. So maybe, just maybe, he allowed them to hurt you, not to break you, but to bring you into the kind of strength that is forged in fire, not in ease. Maybe he allowed the wound so he could become the healer, so he could prove that even when people fail you, he never will. And when you begin to see your pain not as the end, but as the beginning of something holy, something sacred, you will also begin to see yourself not as a victim of life, but as a vessel being prepared for something far greater than you imagined. Pain is not proof that God has left you. It may be the very evidence that he is shaping you. There's a kind of silence that unsettles the soul, the kind that creeps in after you've cried out to God, waited for an answer, and heard nothing. Not a whisper, not a door opening, not a sense of peace, just stillness. And if you've ever sat in that kind of silence, especially after being heard, you know how heavy it can be. You wonder, where is God? Why did he stop this? Why is he so quiet now when I need him most? I want to tell you something that may feel difficult to accept at first, but it's something I've found to be true again and again. God's silence is not the same as his absence. In fact, some of the deepest work God ever does in your life will come in those silent seasons. See, we live in a world that teaches us to equate love with immediate response. When someone cares, they call back. They text back. They show up when you're in pain. And when they don't, we assume they've stopped caring. But God does not love the way the world loves. His ways are higher, and his timing is perfect. Not always comfortable, but always purposeful. When God is silent, he's often trusting you with something sacred. He's saying, I've already spoken. I've already laid the foundation. Now walk by what I've said, not by what you feel. And let me tell you, that's where real faith is born. Not when the skies are clear, but when the clouds don't lift, and you choose to believe anyway. After someone has hurt you, that silence can feel especially cruel. You've been wounded. You've been left carrying pain that you didn't ask for. And then God doesn't seem to say anything at all. But what if that silence isn't a punishment? What if it's a sign that God is drawing you deeper, not away from him, but into him? Think about it. When a teacher is giving a test, they don't speak, not because they're gone, but because they're watching. They're seeing what you've learned, what you know, how you respond under pressure. It doesn't mean they've stopped caring. It means they're trusting the process. God does the same. He's watching your heart, your responses, your surrender. He's growing something in the soil of your silence that words alone could never plant. And often it's in those moments of deep stillness that we finally come face to face with the truth about ourselves. We find out where our trust really lies. We find out if we're following him for the comfort or for the calling. And I'll be honest with you, it's in those silent seasons that I've learned the most. Not just about God, but about me. About how deeply I need him, about how easily I'm drawn to voices that sound like comfort but lack truth. Silence has a way of clearing the noise. It forces us to sit with ourselves, to listen beyond our own thoughts, and tune our ears to something eternal. And I believe that when you're walking through pain and heaven seems quiet, it's not because God has turned away, it's because he's turning you towards something greater. So if you're in that place right now, if your prayers seem to hang in the air unanswered, if you feel abandoned in the aftermath of what someone did to you, don't mistake God's quiet for his departure. He is there. He is near. He is closer than the hurt, closer than the memory, closer than the echo of your unanswered questions. You may not hear him speak right now, but that doesn't mean he's not moving. He's building something in you that doesn't depend on visible signs or emotional highs. He's teaching you to walk by faith, not by sight, not by sound, but by trust. When God is silent, it's not because he's left the room. It's because he's letting your faith find its voice. There's something mysterious about how God works through the very things we'd rather avoid. We pray for peace, for joy, for clarity, and often he gives us pain, confusion, and seasons of silence. We ask to be used, to have purpose, to grow deeper in our faith, and he allows heartbreak, betrayal, or loss to enter the picture. It doesn't feel like a gift when it comes, but over time we begin to see that the wound and the work are not two separate things. They're part of the same process. Sometimes the people who hurt you are unknowingly part of the shaping. I know that's hard to hear, especially when the pain runs deep. When you've been lied to, abandoned, belittled, mistreated, what could possibly come from that but bitterness or brokenness? And yet, somehow in the economy of heaven, even the blow that knocked you down can be used to build you up. God doesn't waste a thing, not a tear, not a sleepless night, not even a betrayal. What the enemy meant to destroy you, God will often allow to develop you. He's not the author of evil, but he is the master of redemption. He knows how to take what was meant for harm and turn it into something sacred. You think about David. Before he was king, he was hunted like an animal by Saul, lied about, chased down, hiding in caves, asking God the same question you may be asking now. Why are you letting this happen? But what David didn't know in the moment was that the cave was preparing him for the crown. The isolation, the injustice, the running, it wasn't wasted. It was all shaping the heart of a man who would one day lead a nation with humility, wisdom, and worship. The wound and the work were happening at the same time. And maybe that's what God is doing with you. Maybe the hurt you endured wasn't in vain. It was laying the foundation for something greater. You may not see the purpose yet, and that's okay. Purpose often arrives long after the pain. But just because you can't see the fruit yet doesn't mean the seed hasn't been planted. You see, healing isn't just about feeling better. It's about becoming someone better. God doesn't just patch up the surface. He transforms from the inside out. And often, the depth of your pain becomes the depth of your capacity to love, to serve, to speak life into others. You become the person who understands what it means to walk through fire and come out refined, not consumed. Some of the most powerful ministries are born from broken places. Some of the wisest hearts are those that have been through the valley and chose not to become bitter, but to become better. And you may not feel like it now, but your story is becoming someone else's survival guide. Your healing will offer hope. Your scars will shine with the proof that God still redeems. And here's the truth. The wound may have been unfair, but the work God is doing with it is undeniably beautiful. It doesn't justify what they did. It doesn't erase the wrong, but it does mean the pain won't have the final word. So the next time you look at your life and see the places where it all seemed to fall apart, look again. Look with eyes of faith, because what's falling apart in your hands might just be falling into place in His. The wound may have shaped you, but the work is what will define you. One of the hardest truths to face after being hurt by someone is the realization that they may never understand what they did to you. They may never say they're sorry. They may never change. And for many people, that's where healing gets stuck, waiting for someone else's apology before we allow our hearts to move forward. But what if I told you that healing doesn't begin with their change? It begins with your perspective. We often imagine that those who hurt us were somehow fully aware of the depth of their actions, and sometimes they are. But more often than not, people hurt from where they are unhealed. Their words, their actions, their betrayals, they usually come from their own brokenness, not from a place of clarity or peace. That doesn't excuse the hurt. It doesn't make the pain any less real. But it does help us to understand that people cannot give what they don't have. You can't expect someone drowning in their own unresolved wounds to offer you lifelines of love and truth. Hurt people hurt people. That's more than a phrase, it's a pattern. And if we're not careful, we'll get caught up in their chaos, pulled under by their damage, instead of learning to rise above it with grace and wisdom. Now, understanding this doesn't mean we stay in harmful situations. It doesn't mean we excuse toxic behavior or allow ourselves to be used. What it means is that we start to release ourselves from the prison of bitterness. Because bitterness doesn't destroy the person who hurt you, it destroys the soul that carries it. And I'll tell you something, you are too valuable, too called, too filled with potential to carry the weight of someone else's brokenness any longer. Jesus, when hanging on the cross, beaten, betrayed, mocked, looked out at those who had wounded him and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That wasn't weakness. That was the greatest strength the world has ever known. He saw past their cruelty and into the blindness of their hearts. And because of that, he stayed in the will of the Father, even in the midst of suffering. That's our model. That's our path forward. We're not called to carry hate. We're called to carry hope. And sometimes that hope begins when we look at the one who hurt us. And even if they never understand what they did, we choose to stop letting their brokenness define our worth. God has a way of redeeming pain, but the first step is letting go of the need to be vindicated. You don't need closure to be healed. You don't need them to admit they're wrong for God to make things right. Healing is not found in their apology. It's found in His presence. When you begin to see people through the lens of mercy, something shifts. Not in them, in you. The chains start to fall off. You realize you were never meant to carry the burden of proving your pain to someone incapable of seeing it. God sees it, and God honors it. He keeps every tear, every sleepless night, every ache you've ever carried. And He knows how to repay, how to restore, how to renew what others try to tear down. So if someone hurt you from a place they never healed, don't let that wound become your identity. Let it become a turning point, a moment of clarity, a moment of release. Choose to live free, not because they earned your forgiveness, but because God has greater things for you to carry. Their brokenness may have left a mark, but by God's grace, it will never define your future. It's easy to feel like time is slipping away when you're hurting, especially when you've been betrayed or abandoned. When things didn't go the way you thought they would, it can feel like life has paused and everyone else is moving forward. You look around, wonder, why am I still here? Why hasn't God changed this? Why hasn't He fixed what they broke? But what if I told you God hasn't forgotten you? That the delay is not denial, and the silence is not a sign that He's doing nothing at all. In fact, it may be the clearest evidence that He's doing something deep, something precise, something eternal. You see, God doesn't rush like we do. He doesn't panic when something falls apart. He doesn't abandon His plan because of a person's mistake, not even yours. We serve a God who sees the end from the beginning. He is not bound by time. He orchestrates it. And that means everything you've walked through, even the hurt that someone else caused, has a place in the larger picture He's painting. The timing of God is one of the most difficult things to trust. We live in a world that moves fast, that rewards immediacy, that measures success and how quickly we can bounce back. But God doesn't work on our schedule. He's not just trying to make things better for you. He's preparing to make things right. And that takes time. Sometimes He holds you back, not to punish you, but to protect you. He delays the breakthrough, not because He doesn't care, but because He's preparing the soil of your heart to carry the weight of the blessing. There are some doors He doesn't open until you've been strengthened by the waiting. There are some promises He holds off fulfilling because the deeper miracle isn't the change around you. It's the change within you. And that includes the healing of wounds others caused. You may be in a season that feels like wandering. You're not where you were, but you're not yet where you thought you'd be. And it's tempting to think you've missed it, that their betrayal set you back permanently, that their decision derailed your destiny. But friend, you are not that powerful, and neither are they. If God has spoken a purpose over your life, no one's actions can cancel it. They may have delayed your plans, but they cannot delay God's. His timing is not just accurate, it's perfect. It's not only about what you're waiting for, it's about who you're becoming while you wait. I think about Moses. He knew from a young age that he was meant to lead his people, to deliver them. But before the Red Sea ever parted, he spent 40 years in the wilderness, alone, unseen, probably questioning everything. But what looked like a delay was actually divine preparation. God was shaping a shepherd out of a man who'd once tried to lead with force. Because what Moses would carry required more than ambition. It required maturity. And it required time. That's what God does. He uses time not to waste your life, but to refine it. And when you start to see your waiting as part of His orchestration, you begin to rest in the knowledge that nothing has been lost. Even the pain, even the betrayal, even the tears, they're all part of the symphony He's composing. So if you're in a place where you feel stuck, overlooked, or forgotten, let me remind you, God has not missed your moment. The setback didn't surprise Him. The betrayal didn't cancel His plan. The time you feel you've lost, He knows how to redeem it. In God's hands, even delay is design. And every moment is leading you to the right time, the right place, and the right purpose. There's a moment after the pain, after the silence, after the long waiting, when you finally begin to see that your story is bigger than the one chapter that broke your heart. At first, it's just a flicker, a shift in the way you think. You're no longer asking only why did they hurt me, but what is God doing with what they tried to break? That question changes everything because it points you away from the wound and toward the redemption. You begin to see that maybe, just maybe, God trusted you with the hurt, not because he wanted you to suffer, but because he saw in you a vessel through which his glory could be revealed. He knew the weight of the pain, yes, but he also knew the strength of what he placed inside you. And he knew that your healing would be more than personal. It would be purposeful. That's the beauty of our God. He takes the very thing the enemy used to try to stop you and turns it into a platform that sets others free. Your story, with all of its brokenness and bruises, becomes someone else's map out of the dark. Your testimony becomes a lifeline to someone who doesn't believe healing is possible. And without even knowing it, your life becomes a light that shines in places you never imagined you'd have influence. What they did to you, it matters, but it's not the final word. God doesn't just mend wounds. He reclaims them. He turns your pain into power, not power over people, but power to help people, to speak life where there's been silence, to offer comfort from a place of compassion, not theory. That's something only the hurting can truly give. You see, comfort is most powerful when it comes from someone who's been there. When you speak from a place of scars, not just sympathy, people listen because they know it's real. And your scars, they're not signs of defeat. They're signs that the wound closed, that healing came, that God was faithful. And the amazing thing is, as you begin to help others heal, you start to heal in deeper ways yourself. You realize you're not just a survivor, you're a vessel of grace. God is using your past to serve his purpose. And what once made you feel disqualified becomes the very thing that qualifies you to carry hope into dark places. But I want you to understand something important. You don't have to be completely healed to be used by God. You don't have to wait until everything is wrapped in a bow and makes sense. Sometimes God uses you mid-process. Sometimes he speaks through the limp, not just the recovery. So don't wait until you have it all together to offer your story, your honesty, your willingness to say, I'm still trusting him in this. That alone can change someone's life. God allowed the hurt, yes, but he also appointed you to carry the healing. You are not just the wounded, you are the witness. A witness to the power of grace, the strength of endurance, the miracle of restoration. When you surrender your story to him, no chapter is wasted. He uses it all, the brokenness, the rebuilding, the wrestling, the redemption. And somewhere in that sacred exchange, the pain loses its grip and purpose takes its place. So don't hide what you've been through. Don't minimize it. Let God use it. Let your life become the evidence that what tried to destroy you couldn't stop what God placed in you. When you give God your pain, he gives you back purpose. And through you, he offers healing to the world.